How many languages do you actually know, Feeny?
Je parle français, et toi?
Un peu, mes amis.
That's actually, I knew that you spoke French because you did that really goofy LeBlanc thing
Yeah.
in the LeBlanc Champion Spotlight.
Yeah.
What is it?
Bienvenue dans le Focus sur LeBlanc, which is welcome to the LeBlanc Champion
That
Spotlight.
is way better than you did it in that episode.
Really?
No, Worlds is going to be happening on this patch specifically. It's not the, we will still patch continuously, right? We're going to have 519 and 520, but I want to get you guys' opinion on what things are going to look like for this tournament, right? Because we pushed out the Juggernaut update, and the world was on fire, and it was like, yeah, well, we have 2 patches to balance it. Well, this is it, right? This is if your nerfs or buffs are not in here, this is what Worlds is going to be played on.
All right, well, since we were talking about this being the Worlds patch, I feel like there's a question that has to be raised, which is that, and this is going to cover patches since the Juggernauts were released to now, where they're being tuned down.
The 516 to the 518 era.
Exactly.
Right.
What is the proper landscape of League of Legends?
I think a good landscape for Worlds is one where we want to try sort of eliminate those 100% pick bans that people are picking just for power reasons, right? It's like, if I'm a top laner, I gotta grab Gangplank, right? Like, that's not a good state, right? He's too crazy, too strong. We nerfed him to 517, sort of his reliability. We're nerfing him to 518. The second F is like, sort of what's implied by that are like a lot of these buffs enough for a lot of the characters. We did a lot of very minor tweaks to characters in both directions. The goal isn't to say that like any particular character is going to get picked now. It's not like, okay, the Zyra changes went through, we're gonna see Zyra in Worlds. That's not the goal. The goal is always that people have options. It's like, could we see Zyra in Worlds? If the answer to that question is yes, then we've done a good job and we're at a great ecosystem.
I think that makes sense to me as a spectator because I think of some of my favorite characters. I love Sion, I love Echo, I love Lucian. These are kind of like some of my top bros. And it's sad for me when I can't even conceive of a game state where any of them could be played, right? Which, all relatively seeing spot play, so I'm pretty good for right now. Maybe it doesn't play out in a way that Sion gets picked, right? But I can think to myself, I'm like, oh, they picked Malphite, he's really good into that, or they picked this thing, he's really good into that, right? It's enough of a wide open field, and it's less of this contained, only 30, 40 champions getting played in Worlds.
Actually, to your point, that was sort of, I think, sort of big impetus behind the Juggernaut changes in particular. These were all characters that weren't even considered to be options for professional play in any regard.
And honestly, in many cases, even regular play.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, these are characters that kind of weren't anywhere normally.
Yeah, I mean, so we did a bunch of updates. Like, these are characters that are on people's radars now. Like, so it was like, maybe we might see Skarner. We did see Skarner in
And we actually saw, I mean, this is going to be wrong numbers, like roughly, 2 Skarner games and a Darius. We saw no Mordekaiser. I don't think we saw Garen.
I was also up watching. I sent an email out to everyone. I was like, guys, they're playing on 516. Get in here. And the first 2.5 sets, there was no bans and no picks on these characters, right? We would have thought, we were all watching. It's like Fiora, Gangplank. We're like, okay, what's next? And they're like, Riven. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then they just banned like normal and they picked like normal and there wasn't anything. But I looked at the characters that were played in that game. It was like Braum, Alistar were the supports. Ashe, Kalista were the AD carries. And I'm like, of course you're not going to pick Darius and Garen into this kind of stuff because you'll just get kited for days. And that, these characters were made with these weaknesses in mind. And so when we did see, I believe it was QG pick Darius, they first banned Ashe. And that's when we were all like, uh-oh. Someone has a plan here. And so I'd personally be very excited to see them played, but not just as the 100% slam pick ban that I think people thought they were going to be, but with this thought. Because, they do have some counters in the top lane that I think you can maneuver around in Champ Select.
All that being said, I think what you mentioned is really cool. The idea that in pro play, in order to make these champions viable, it can actually affect the pick ban phase to the extent that if I want to play Darius, if we have spent the time to build a comp that uses Darius effectively, we're going to have to expend bans to allow that to happen, right? Yeah. And so I think that actually is a really cool design element because I get angry at the stasis of pick ban, where it's like, oh, well, we're gonna see, pretty much any one of 10 champions get banned, through the six bans, and then we'll just go down the power rankings from there to create our 2 teams. Right. And so, in that realm, I think it is a success, right? The introduction of the Juggernauts. Now, can you ban out enough of the kiting champions to make it happen? That's what I don't know, right? I feel like there might still be enough tools to deal with juggernauts on a competitive level.
Well, there's also a lot of other characters that we haven't seen in a while, too, that might be effective counter for some of these characters that might pick up. Anivia is an example. Doesn't matter how fast Skarner's running at your face if you just wall them off.
Yeah.
There are all these other characters that I think are, these characters, every single Juggernaut has extremely stark strengths and weaknesses. Professional teams are fantastic at exploiting weaknesses of champions.
Yeah.
And also, working around those and really getting really, really deep and playing around these sort of meta elements of all these characters. And so, especially because, these Juggernauts went out in 5.16, Worlds on 5.18, but it's effectively locked. You're going to have a lot of additional time between 5.18 and even like when people are playing. People are going to have a lot of time to figure out, if these Juggernauts are really powerful and known quantities that other teams might be picking these up, what do you pick up to sort of respond and how do you counter those?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really excited to see.
So that begs the question, though, where, the age-old question is like, what are we balancing for? Competitive or solo queue?
So, traditionally, we try and balance for both. That's not always possible. On this patch specifically, because it is the Worlds patch, there's a lot of focus on professional play. We are weighting more towards the professional scene for this patch. We have a few changes that are not geared for professional play. Yeah. That's why on Fiora, for example, we're not reducing her ability to sort of take off and dominate a game. Yeah. We're trying to hit the, can you exploit a weakness that pro teams are able to do? Can we make that easier and more readily available for them?